Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. I am excited to have you. We both are excited to have you today to talk some 49ers football. Now, we don't know how things went for you last night and today with the election, but we can tell you that we're not going to let you down, whether you're happy or sad. Hopefully, by the end of this, you'll be happy again and stay that way. I am one of your hosts, Marc Adams. You can find me at 49ers Camelot, and I'm joined by my co-host of over a year now, Anthony Robertson of 49ers Cutback. Ant, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. And you know what? I did not think about that. It's been over a year since we started working together. At first, we were just kind of meshed together on the PSF app, and now it's grown into something consistent that we've been able to do every single week. It's definitely one of my favorite shows that I get to do every single week because I get to talk with you, and it's always a lot of fun. And I'll be honest, I can't possibly have a bad day today. Today is my birthday.
Happy
I get
birthday.
to join everyone on the Red and Bold Show. Thanks, Mark, for
Nice.
my birthday. And so, yeah, it's an exciting day for me, and I'm enjoying talking 49ers football.
That's great. Hope that you're having a great birthday and that it gets even better. Any plans for tonight?
Yeah, I'm gonna hit up the local taco truck and enjoy some tacos and things with my family. That's my go-to is tacos. So yeah, we're gonna do that tonight and just kind of enjoy each other's company and live it up a little bit. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's been a great day so far, and I'm sure it'll continue to be great.
That's great. Josh in the chat said, "Happy birthday, Aunt, you old man." Wow. Wishing you
It's facts.
well and then insulting you at the same time. So, and Papa J's in the house. He says, "What up, guys? What up, Papa J?" Steve-O is in here with us. Wish taco trucks did hard shell. Yeah, I don't know. Do you like do you like corn tortillas? Because I'm a flour guy. I'm not crazy about the corn tortillas.
Yeah, I do. I like corn tortillas. I like flour too. I don't discriminate. I like pretty much all Mexican food. I mean, I love and I enjoy cooking it too. But the taco truck that I go to has won the city championship for like 10 years straight. This
Wow.
place is ridiculously good. There are people that talk about how they drive from the Bay Area to go get this taco truck. It's that good. So that's what I'm talking about. It catered my wedding. It's a lot of fun. I love it.
Nice. Well, listen, Steve-O in the chat says he's a flour guy. Josh said little onions and cilantro on them. He's going for only the authentic tacos. And Papa J says happy birthday, Aunt. So thanks everybody for joining us. We're excited. This is not a cooking show. So we're going to get into some 49er stuff as fun as it is to talk about tacos. And so hopefully you have a great rest of your birthday, Ant.
Thanks.
Well, the 49ers didn't do much at the trade deadline. In fact, the trade deadline came and went, and we all were left kind of thinking that they did nothing. And then word started trickling out that they had made a trade for defensive tackle Khalil Davis. Now, this is not Kalia Davis. This is a different defensive tackle with a very similar name, Khalil Davis. He's played 172 snaps so far this season. He has 1 sack, 8 pressures, 4 tackles for loss, 4 stops. What do you think about Khalil Davis? Have you watched him much? Is this a good? I saw that Larry Krueger was talking about him, said that he can get kind of pushed around in the run game, but he thought that he had good burst and that this would be a good pickup for the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, full transparency, I didn't know much about him. I mean, there was confusion when I was texting. I'm a part of a group chat, and I text, "Hey, the 49ers got Khalil Davis," and somebody else texts, "Hey, the 49ers traded Khalil Davis." So there was definitely a confusion on that. But going back and watching him, you can see the explosion jump off. I mean, that's one thing he can do. He can penetrate and get in the backfield. His size, 6'2", 315 pounds. He's a bigger slasher that the 49ers normally get. And that's really what he is, right? He's that normal fit. You look at the guys that they got, Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens. They're all the same mold, and he fits the bill. You're talking about a guy that at his combine ran a 4.75 40. That's moving for a 310, 315-pound defensive lineman. He's got explosion. He's got good first step, but he's never really been able to make it happen. You look, he went to Tampa Bay as a 6th-round pick in 2020, fizzled out there. They waived him. He ends up with Indianapolis, doesn't do anything there. He has to go all the way to the UFL, and he's at the UFL for a little bit until he gets his shot last year with the Houston Texans, and he had a really good season for D'Amico Ryans, which means he probably found a scheme fit that works for him. Now, this year he hasn't had as much opportunity, only playing 32% of the snaps, played a lot more last season, and so you see his numbers dip. But you're talking about a rotational piece and a guy that you can have maybe fill in for Kevin Givens, who's still dealing with an injury, and I thought that was a really good move. A 2026 7th-round pick. I love this. I mean, go ahead and get a move, bring a guy in, have him compete. If it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. But I thought it was a nice move and a fit, and let's see what he can do. You never know. There's been players before. You're like Jordan Willis. I don't know. He hasn't really done anything with the Jets. Charles Omenihu never really worked out for the Texans. Comes to the 49ers under Chris Kasarik and does a good job. So I don't want to put anyone making them think this is going to be Charles Omenihu. I'm just saying these are the type of things that have happened with Chris Kasarik. So we got to be kind of patient and see what happens. But, hey, at least they made something happen and tried to improve the depth along the defensive line.
Yeah, and I see that Josh in the chat said he's a pass rusher more than a run guy. I was hoping that they were going to get a run stuffer. They chose to go this route instead, and maybe they tried to get DJ Jones or somebody who's even better against the run. But maybe that just wasn't available, and so this was the route they had to take. I don't know, but I agree with Josh what he said there, that he's not really the run stuffer. I mentioned that Larry Krueger had said that as well. And Josh also said in the chat that he had a sack against Baker Mayfield last year. So hopefully he'll have a sack against Baker Mayfield again there. So then Bobby is in the chat. He asks, is this Khalil Davis worth picking up? I know it was only for a 7th-round pick, but we also have to cut someone from the 53. Who gets the boot?
Well, they released Jalen Graham yesterday. So Jalen Graham was the corresponding move for the 49ers. And with depth going to increase here pretty soon with Dre Greenlaw, I think that really, though, with Jalen Graham, it was more so that Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles was hurt. D. Winters had been dealing with ankle injuries off and on. I think they feel like they're more healthy at the position now. And so you can move on from a linebacker. They also have excessive players at tight end where they have 4. Now they have 6 defensive tackles. The likelihood is one of those defensive tackles is going to go, or Kevin Givens is going to end up on the IR because they've got to make room for Christian McCaffrey. They got to make room for potentially John Feliciano in the next 21 days. And now they just opened up the 21-day window for Yetur Gross-Matos. So, yeah, you got to, when you bring guys in, you've got to make movement. But if you feel that you're improving a position, why not go do it for a 7th-round pick? You're going to get a 7th-round pick and a comp and replace that by 2026, no problem. 49ers still have 11 draft picks next season, which is phenomenal.
Santa Clara fella said Khalil Davis is a nice depth piece and big guy that can help slow the run. 49er Classic said, happy birthday, the greatest son a father could ever have. Is this your dad?
It's my dad, yeah.
Oh, how cool. Well, welcome, Mr. Ant's dad. We're happy to have you in here. He said, always enjoy your take on my 49ers. So that's great. And that's one of the reasons why I love working with Ant. You have great takes. And not only that, but I listen to you and John Chapman every week as well. I know you're on with him on Thursdays. Hopefully you don't like him as much as you like me, but you're both are 2 of my favorite guys. And so I listen to you guys all the time. Let's move on from that, because the 49ers brought back a familiar face. Tashaun Gibson has been added to the practice squad. My question is he going to stay on the practice squad, or do you think that he gets elevated, whether it's the standard elevation where they come up for the game and then go back down, or do you think that they eventually bring him up for good?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. You know, when he got released by the Jacksonville Jaguars on, I think it was Sunday or Monday, I can't remember the exact date. I remember thinking, wow, I wonder if he's coming. And thank you, Jacksonville, for having him for his entire suspension. So that way he could be available to be ready to go. I think this is a very smart move by the 49ers because when it comes to depth at safety, they've definitely been lacking. They've tried Adrian Amos now 1 week, but another veteran that they've brought in. But we know who Tashawn Gibson is. And I would argue right now that the play that Tashawn Gibson had last season is better than either one of the safeties we've had playing for us this season for the most part. I think he's been better than Malik. He's been better than Jair. And so if they get him in and he's working on the practice squad and he is better than those guys, this 49ers team still wants to win a championship. And you just can't have blunders in the biggest games and you can't afford losing games down the stretch. So I think he is a real option, but I think he's got to go out there and prove it that he's ready to go, that he's going to be capable. And then you've got a tough decision to make because then what are you going to do with those young players? Hufanga could be coming back in the next couple of weeks. Are you going to just run it back with Tashawn Gibson and Talanoa Hufanga and put the two young guys as backups? And what does that mean for George Odom as well? It gets really, really interesting, but I like that they have Tashawn Gibson because right now they don't have a stable veteran in that secondary on the back end, and I would love to have somebody that can do that. So I thought it was a really nice move. I don't know what it means. I don't know exactly if he'll be elevated right away, but I sure like having the option to have him available, especially if something happened to Jair and Malik.
Is it possible that they brought him on because they're not as confident that Hufanga is going to be coming back anytime soon?
I think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, maybe they're not as set on Hufanga coming back with a cast on. Maybe they're worried about that. So that could be a big reason why. And if he's not, and they think this is something maybe they want to wait later down the road, maybe playoff time or something for Hufanga to come back, then yeah, put Tashawn Gibson, bring him up to the active roster, and then you have two stable safeties with him and George Odom playing behind your two young stars. So I think it's a good idea for the 49ers to have him, and it does insulate you in case Hufanga can't come back. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, that makes me a little concerned because I think that when somebody asked Kyle Shanahan maybe a couple of weeks ago about Hufanga, and he seemed non-committal about him returning this season. So maybe he's just trying not to overplay his hand, or maybe he's just not wanting to commit one way or another. But that is a little concerning. And now that they bring in Gibson, it just kind of makes me wonder if that might be the situation.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with what could happen there. I know it's the agent for Talanoa Hufanga was really pushing back on Michael Silver when he put out the article that Talanoa Hufanga wasn't going to return it. That was the internal thought process with the 49ers. And we know that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have definitely been non-committal. But I think that it all comes down to what Huff can do, what that cast looks like. I think there's an anticipation that it's going to be a club, but we don't know that for sure. We just know it will at least cover the wrist and the thumb because you can't have the thumb moving as somebody who damaged their wrist, thumb area. I know that. So I don't know. He might still have 4 fingers he can use to tackle. I don't know for sure what that would look like, but I'm sure Huff wants to be on the field because Huff is still playing for a contract next year. And so he wants to be out there and prove that he can still play at a high level so he can go get a good contract in the offseason, whether that's with the 49ers or somebody else.
No pressure to Talanoa Hufanga, but Patrick Willis played with a cast. So if he can do it, well, that's probably bad because Patrick Willis was really, really special. So I don't want to make Hufanga have to live up to that. Regarding the trade deadline, were you surprised that that Lynch didn't do more than he did, or do you think that this was kind of what you were expecting? Not a big name, but somebody that could just kind of fill in and be a depth piece.
Personally, I did think they were going to do a little bit more. I thought maybe it would be somebody like Arden Key or somebody of that nature, but I did feel like they were going to address defensive line. And my thought process was always, can we get a defensive lineman, a defensive tackle that can make Jordan Elliott a backup? Because I thought that made the team so much better. It's not that Elliott's played terrible, but him as a number 2 or a number 3, a part of that Bravo rotation just really makes a lot more sense for the 49ers. So I thought they were going to maybe do something there or bring in an Arden Key or somebody that could kind of stabilize the edge rush. They did neither. And it's interesting because all the names that the 49ers were kind of connected to didn't really get moved. I mean, none of those guys did, which means the teams were either asking for too much or the 49ers weren't willing to give up enough to get him. And so I think that really that's all you can ask for. The market kind of played out the way it played out, and they felt like getting guys back like Yetur Gross-Matos and getting back, like Christian McCaffrey, Dre Greenlaw, John Feliciano, those were enough to put this team over the top. And I don't know if I can really argue, because those are all starting caliber players that you had in your Super Bowl run, and now you're getting them back. It's like you're getting half a team back, and that's pretty crazy. So I get the process, but yeah, I was expecting a little bit more from John Lynch, and we'll see how it plays out.
Well, that's a great segue to what I wanted to ask you about next, and that's the players coming back, because even though they didn't really do much of anything at the trade deadline, as you mentioned, they are getting several players back, and some of the players that they're getting back are difference makers, starters. One guy who was the offensive player of the year last year, you might have heard of him. So I want to see what you think about each one coming back and how they personally will impact the team. Let's start with that offensive player of the year, Christian McCaffrey. How will he impact this team, presuming he's healthy enough to do so?
Yeah, I think that Christian McCaffrey's the most important player that the 49ers are going to get back. Nobody changes the game like Christian McCaffrey does. The amount of mismatches that are created for Kyle Shanahan just by moving Christian McCaffrey is phenomenal. I went back and I watched a little bit of McCaffrey, even in the run game, and just some of the things I've seen this year from the running backs missing holes or maybe not running with the proper technique. You definitely see Christian McCaffrey can handle all those situations. So I think the run game gets a lot better. I think when it comes to Kyle Shanahan being able to scheme things up, it gets easier for Debo, it gets easier for George Kittle, and for the other playmakers on this football team because of McCaffrey. And I think the biggest impact is felt in the red zone. The 49ers last year led the league 68% of the time. They scored touchdowns inside the red zone. And without Christian McCaffrey, we've seen that plummet.
Yeah.
So his impact on the red zone is going to be such a huge effect. And that doesn't just change things for the offense, but that changes things for the special teams. That changes things for the defense. When all of a sudden now offense is getting 7 points instead of 3, you feel like as a defense, you can play a little bit more aggressive. You can take people out of their normal game plan. So it's a huge impact for the entire team. Not only is it a weapon for the offense, but it's a weapon for the entire team. And I think they really needed this, and it's going to make a huge impact. Red zone, third downs, 49ers should be significantly better.
Yeah, I agree. David Yang said CMC is the cheat code, and that's true. I mean, he's different. Jordan Mason's played really well. Isaac Guerrero has been good in moments, but none of them are like CMC. I mean, Saquon Barkley is the closest. Like, what was he doing on that when he hurdled the guy backwards? I have never seen that. That was crazy, crazy athletic. But other than Saquon Barkley, maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is another one that I would put in that category. But McCaffrey is the standard, not only just for the 49ers, but for the NFL in how to use a running back out of the backfield. And so I agree. And I think that his biggest thing is not so much in the run game, but as you've mentioned this before, it's what he does in the passing game. As a check down, you can line him up out wide. You can put him in the slot. You can bring him out of the backfield. He's just a weapon that you can use all over the place, kind of like Deebo Samuel. So Santa Clara Fella said CMC return cannot be overstated. The Niners will return to dominance and being money in the red zone. Definitely see. I agree with that. That's a great take. Okay, next one, Juwan Jennings. I saw that Josh in the chat said JJ coming back is huge. I completely agree. Juwan Jennings, before he got injured, was the best receiver the 49ers have had this season. No clue if it'll continue that way, but he was having a really good season. So I think it's huge getting Juwan Jennings back. What do you see him bringing to the offense from this point on? And how does this affect Ricky Pearsall?
Well, I think it's huge for Ricky Pearsall because now he's not expected to go out there and do a lot more than he's supposed to do. It kind of puts him in a good situation where Jawan and Debo, they can get a lot of the carries. And then you can kind of take Ricky from the 50 snaps he got last week to about 30 to 35, and he can kind of play in certain roles for Kyle Shanahan. But then Jawan comes in, and we know the things Jawan does well. He runs really good routes. He's able to create separation, which means it's huge for third down. And that's exactly what the 49ers need. They need a third down monster. Jawan is that guy. Plus, Brock Purdy can count on Jawan Jennings to get where he's supposed to get. We haven't seen that from the other guys. So now you feel like you're going to have three receivers at the top of your receiver room, with Ricky Pearsall being one of them, that you can expect to be where he's supposed to be and make the catch if the ball is on him. And I think that's huge for Brock. It's a safety security blanket. Plus, we've seen Jawan Jennings have huge games this year, which means they still got an explosive impact player in Jawan Jennings. Jennings, Debo, they give you a certain type of attitude to the way you play football. Plus, Jawan in the red zone, the physicality, blocking, but also a big target catching the football. I think it's a big win for the 49ers. They needed Jawan, and probably why they weren't active in the trade market when it came to a wide receiver. And so Jawan, Ricky Pearsall, Debo, they're going to be the ones who get the most of the catches, and they're probably going to have a lot of really big games, but it's big getting Jawan back.
Yeah, and it puts you in a situation where if Debo gets hurt or if he's sick or, like we've seen for the last couple of games, you're not in a situation where you have Ricky Pearsall, a rookie who's only played in a couple of games, and then Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell being the ones that are getting so many of the snaps. So you have a guy like Jennings who's been there, who was close to being named Super Bowl MVP. So he knows the offense. He knows what it's about to come up in big moments and big games. So yeah, this is huge for the 49ers offense. Getting back McCaffrey, getting back Jawan Jennings. There's another offensive player that they're getting back, or who at least the practice window has been open for, and that's John Feliciano. How do you see him impacting once they add him to the active roster? How do you see him impacting the offense?
Well, I mean, automatically, he's the number one guy in at either one of the guard spots and center. I mean, that's just how good he is. And we've seen him be consistent last season. Down the stretch, he was the second best offensive lineman to only Trent Williams. And losing him in the Super Bowl was a huge loss. And we've seen, what happened when he was out. So getting him in is going to be important. I don't know if that's Tampa Bay. I don't mind it being Tampa Bay, getting him involved. And he's, the 49ers haven't really had to rely on any other backups along their offensive line except Jalen Moore after Trent Williams threw a punch and Spencer Burford in a couple of situations. But Feliciano has proven throughout his time in the league, and especially when he's played for the 49ers, that he's a consistent player to step in. And you know what? Heaven forbid something happens to Jake Brendel. You don't really lose a lot if you go to John Feliciano. I mean, some would argue that you actually get better. And so having a guy that's that capable is so huge for a football team. I didn't know if they were going to open his 21-day window because the way that they were treating it, you got to make sure you have those open IR spots in case somebody else gets hurt and you got to bring him back. But they feel comfortable with it. And let's be honest, everyone knows he's the next best offensive lineman that they have on this football team. So I think it's going to be nice, and I can't wait to have him in because I feel really comfortable with John Feliciano stepping in for any of those interior offensive line positions and playing really well.
Okay, so Josh asked, does Russell Gage play? Now, I have to admit that I did not see that the 49ers signed him. Before we went on, I got up here with you just like 2 minutes before we went on. My teenage daughter's learning how to drive, and so I was out driving with her, which is sometimes scary and sometimes fine, and then other times terrifying. But that's that's the way it is when you're teaching kids how to drive, I guess. So here's the thing: they signed Russell Gage to the practice squad. They released Malik Turner from the practice squad. Had you heard this? Because I did not see this before I came on. But Josh is asking, does he play? I mean, right now he's on the practice squad, so he'd have to be activated or elevated to the active roster first. What do you think they're going to do with Russell Gage? He's a veteran that's been around for a while.
Yeah, I think there's a potential for him to be elevated. Chris Conley's not practicing; he's dealing with a hamstring, and so you have the guys up top. I mean, Debo looks like he's going to play, even though he was limited. So you've got Jawan, you've got Ricky Pearsall, you've got Debo, you got Jacob Cowing, you got Ronnie Bell. You should be able to roll in with 5 guys, but you might elevate Russell Gage if you feel like you need another guy to step in and play. And so he's been around for a while. He's made some plays. I think they feel like he's an upgrade over Malik Turner. And so they went ahead and went that route. I mean, it's a guy, I think, with 14 career touchdowns. That's pretty good. And so I think the 49ers have an option there. I don't know what that means for Tampa Bay week. Maybe they're looking at this as a long game as they have to make more roster decisions. We'll see. But right now, I think with Chris Conley, you have to keep it at least in perspective that maybe Russell Gage does play in the near future. So we'll see.
Another player that they're getting back is Jake Moody, the kicker. Obviously, we know what he brings. That means that we don't have to deal with the kickers that that we've had, even though they haven't been bad. I mean, there have been, I think, at least one missed PAT, but from field goal perspectives, they've been good. The problem has been on kickoffs, and where Moody can kick that thing out of the end zone. So is that the biggest part that we get from Jake Moody, or is it or is it also the field goal part of it that he has such a big leg?
Yeah, I think the kickoff part is probably the one that's the most glaring right now, because we've seen what happened when they had Matthew Wright or when they had Andres Carlson. They just couldn't kick it out of the end zone. And without those touchbacks, they're actually losing field position. I think the average field position is for the 49ers like 32 or 33 yard line. And we know a kickoff out of the end zone puts them at the 30. So that's an improvement already. And yeah, 2 or 3 yards doesn't seem like a lot, but that could be the difference between the opposing team getting into field goal range and not getting into field goal range. And then I think with Jake Moody, one of the reasons they decided to go with him over Robbie Gould a couple of years ago was the leg strength when it came to field goals, because he's a guy that can make a 55-plus yard field goal, which extends your opportunity to score on a drive. There's a lot of times the 49ers would have to get an extra first down or an extra couple first downs for Robbie Gould to be able to make a field goal. Yeah. And with Jake Moody, you just don't have to do that. So he was having a good season. He did have one big miss for a field goal, but for the most part, he had been really consistent this season. And we've seen him make very clutch kicks, including in the Super Bowl, where he led the NFL for a short period of time, the longest field goal in history. It didn't last long as the Harrison Butker, but we've seen the guy be able to do it. I think he's a young ascending player, so it'll be nice to have him out there for his kickoffs and for his length when it comes to field goals.
The problem with 49ers fans and Jake Moody is that that when he has missed, it's been when the game is on the line. So that's something that I'd like to see him get better at. But again, he's a young kicker. Last year, he was a rookie, and rookie kickers struggle. So I'm going to give him a pass on things that happened last year. Another player that they've opened the practice window for, you mentioned already, is Yetur Gross-Matos. What does this mean for the defensive line rotation? Obviously, he was expected to do some work on the outside as an edge rusher. What do you see him doing? Just a depth piece? Is that mainly what he's going to be?
Yeah, I think this is exactly why they didn't end up spending on an edge rusher. I know Josh asked earlier about a fourth for Azeez Ojulari, and I would have done that all day, but it's probably because they see potential in Yetur Gross-Matos. And he was a guy who had 4.5 sacks last year, and he's a guy that can play outside and inside. What they've been doing with Sam Okuanu and Yetur Gross-Matos instead of Sam Okuanu, who's a little bit on the shorter side. Gross-Matos is 6'5". He's got all the things you want for an edge defender that can move inside. So I think it does give him versatility. I don't think we've seen the right Yetur Gross-Matos this season. He got hurt in the last preseason game. I think he tried to come back early, and it didn't really work out. So the 49ers ended up putting him on the shelf. So now we're going to get to see a fully healthy Gross-Matos, and let's see what he can do. He rushed really well for Carolina on the inside last year. If they can duplicate that, I think there's opportunities for him to get to the quarterback. So I think he's going to really help this 49ers defense. And then we've got a solid rotation on the DN position. Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd, Gross-Matos, Sam Okuanu. You throw in Robert Beal here and there, and you feel like you're pretty comfortable with the depth you have at defensive end.
We talked about this before we went live, that Charvarius Ward is not at practice. The funeral for his baby girl is Friday, I think is what you said. When do you think that he might return to the team? Obviously, what he's been through is unthinkable, and football should take a back seat to that. He deserves how much ever time he needs to come back. Some guys want to jump right back in there because the time that I'm at practice or the time that I'm in a game is time that I don't have to think about the pain that I'm dealing with. Others take it slowly. They spend more time with their family. Any indication at all, and I'm putting you on the spot because this is a terrible question, but you have any idea when he might return, or do you see him missing multiple games?
Yeah, I honestly do not know. I know this is a terrible tragedy that's going to affect him greatly. He was very close with his daughter. They had a very good relationship. And I mean, nobody knows how to handle a loss of a child. So I honestly don't know. I don't know what that means. I mean, we've seen players, like you said, that come back immediately. A guy like Marquise Goodwin, who scores a touchdown, in a big situation like that. You see others that need to be away for 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how things are going. I think it just depends on, where Mooney's at with his situation and how he wants to handle it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer when it comes down to it. It's just completely on him. I think the 49ers have to brace for a position where he's not going to be here for a little bit. And they're going to have some other guys step up. And I think if that happens, the team just got to rally behind him and get it done. So I don't have a clear answer for this. And I don't know anyone that can answer it other than Charvarius Ward. And I think we're all just going to wait, and we're just going to pray for him and his family. And when he's ready to come back, then we know Mooney will be out there and be the dog that he is. But until then, he's got to be who he needs to be for his family. And I think that's important.
Yeah, and at this point, he may not even have any clue when he's going to be back. So I think it's important, like what you said, we need to pray for him, and we need to be patient and let him come back when he's ready. If he misses multiple games, how do you think that secondary is going to look? Obviously, Renardo Green, Diamador Lenore, Isaac Yedem. What do you think? Rock Yassin, is he likely to be one of the ones that comes in to fill that void?
Yeah, I think that's what they'll do. Renardo Green and Diamador Lenore play on the outside. And then when they go to their nickel, then they'll bring in Isaac Yedem, and he'll play on the outside. And they'll move Diamador Lenore into the nickel just like they've done consistently. And I think that they'll feel pretty confident with the ability of those guys to go get it done, especially in the next two matchups. Tampa Bay, they're going to be without a couple of really good wide receivers. And so they're a little bit weakened at the position. The 49ers should be able to hold on and hang in there. And then when you look at Seattle, we don't know how healthy DK Metcalf's going to be when the 49ers get there. But we've seen these guys play, right? We've seen Isaac Yedem play against them and do really well early on this season. And Renardo Green have a pick in that football game. So I think that the 49ers feel comfortable with their secondary. And when you're talking about depth, and you got Rock Yassin as the next guy in after that, and then even Darrell Luter Jr., I think the 49ers are probably more comfortable with their cornerback room than they've ever been before. And that's a great news for the 49ers, because they just feel like, yeah, they want Mooney. They're better with Mooney, but they can withstand a Mooney absence, and that's good news.
I want to talk about the Tampa game and the 49ers second half surge. But before we do, I want to get to this question from David Yang. He asked, what's the latest on big play Dre? I haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe that he's had a setback or that he's coming back anytime in the very soon future. But November was kind of what I spoke to an orthopedic surgeon shortly after the Super Bowl, and to kind of get an idea of when Greenlaw might return. And what he told me led me to believe that November was the time to start looking for him to return. Now, the problem is that he said that for an NFL linebacker, that I think that was about a 6-month period or something like that, No, that's probably not right. My math's bad, but whatever it was, he said 9 months or whatever it was. He said that that can be a good time for an NFL linebacker to return if he's able to ever, and which concerned me a little bit because it was almost like he was saying, "Look, there's a possibility that he could never return." I think that Greenlaw will, and I think that it could be this month, probably later or maybe even in December. Have you heard anything different than that?
Basically, I mean, you started getting comments about him running on the side field on Monday. He was doing sprints wearing a helmet. That's progress. That means we're starting to trend towards the period in which he's going to potentially have his 21-day window opened. I've been pretty consistent that I felt like it was going to be sometime in the end of November that we could see Drake Greenlaw come back. I don't expect him to open his 21-day window until probably after the Seattle game. I think that's the most likely. And then him to come back either at Green Bay, Buffalo, or December 5th after that. I think that's kind of the stretch where we could be getting Drake Greenlaw coming back. But they're going to be completely careful with Drake Greenlaw because the most important thing is that they have him ready to roll when they get to the playoffs. So December sometime wouldn't be out of the question for Drake Greenlaw to come back. I think everyone would love to have him back at the end of November. But you brought up the 9-month mark. The 9-month mark is coming up when they play Seattle. So that's kind of the normal timetable for an Achilles. Anything after that, I think, is kind of where we're looking at with Dre. The good news is they've started to say he's week to week, which means it's about conditioning. It's about getting himself ready. And once they feel comfortable and confident, then they can get him out on the practice field and really see how he's able to engage when he's in his drops and he's got to drive on footballs and when he's got to change direction. Those are going to be the big tests for him. And I think those are still ahead, and he's got to prove that he can overcome it.
Yeah, I think that they will be cautious with him, just like they'll be cautious with Christian McCaffrey. Somebody asked the question earlier if the 49ers were going to go with a running back by committee for a while. And I definitely think that we most likely will see that. We'll see some Jordan Mason along with McCaffrey and probably some Garendo as well, because they don't want to bring him back, have him rupture his Achilles, and now his 2025 season is in jeopardy. So they'll definitely be cautious with that. So with the Tampa game, obviously you mentioned this already, that the Bucs are without a couple of their receivers. What do you see on film that makes you either excited or concerned when Tampa has the ball? When the 49ers are on defense, what do you think that's going to look like?
Well, I think one thing that really concerns me is that Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if they get the run game going, that makes them very potent offense. And so getting stops in the run game is going to be pivotal for the 49ers. Tampa Bay is bullish in the fact that they'll run the ball on first, they'll run the ball on second, and then try to get Baker Mayfield to pick up a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, and just feel comfortable with that style of offense. But that offense has been really good this season. Explosive. They find ways to get the ball to any receiver. And of course, it's a lot easier when you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Then you have a lot of guys there. You have a pretty good tight end as well. And so they're just got a very good offense. And Baker Mayfield has just been completely comfortable in this offense. He looks good. He avoids pressure, movement in the pocket, can make any throw you need him to make on the field. Strong arm, pretty good accuracy this season. I think this is the best Baker Mayfield we've seen in his entire career. And I think a lot of it has to go with the offense that they're playing there, the talent around him. So I think that they're pretty good, and that's probably the biggest concern, that they're going to get their run game going against the 49ers defense that has struggled at times against the run game. And if they do, that's going to open up things for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that we don't want opened up. So they can still make plays, they can still score points, even though they're not going to have their two biggest wide receiver weapons in this football game.
And the 49ers defense has not been good on 3rd down this season. So could that be a problem in this game?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are pretty good when it comes to 3rd down. They are converting at 51% of the time on 3rd down. That's not good for the 49ers. So 3rd down efficiency is going to be huge. And part of that's going to be forcing those 3rd and longs. You have to have success on early downs. And that's what the 49ers have to do. Now, of course, a lot of that number is because Baker Mayfield could trust to get the ball to Mike Evans, and he could trust getting the ball to Chris Godwin in those early games. Now they're not there. So that will definitely make their third down efficiency hurt a little bit. And they have been on a skid. They have not been winning consistently over the last 5 weeks. So the 49ers are catching them at a good time, but they just played really well against a very good defense on Monday night against the I almost said Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but against the Kansas City Chiefs. And so I think that they're going to be a tough out. And I think the 49ers are going to have to be really good on third down. And so far, I mean, John Lynch talked about this earlier this week, that they've got to be a lot better and tighten things up on third down. And I think that's going to be a goal for the second half of the season.
Yeah, hopefully that's a focus. David Yang wrote that he's worried about Bucky Irving. I would echo that. From what I hear, this guy's he's got some ability, and if they start to, he's the running back for Tampa. If they start to feature him, he's the kind of running back that could be a problem.
Yeah, and he's a matchup issue if you get him on like a guy like Devondre Campbell. You can kind of come up with some unique matchups to get him good looks in the passing game as well. He's a good runner. He runs with physicality. He's got speed. He's not an easy out. And I think the 49ers are going to have to be mindful of the type of situations they put Campbell and they put other linebackers in guarding Bucky Irving, because that's going to be a matchup they're going to look to exploit. And so the way that the 49ers do that with Christian McCaffrey and the opposing linebackers, that's what's going to happen in this game with Bucky Irving. But he's a dual threat. He can do it both, do it all. And I think that is going to be a tough matchup for the 49ers. I would guess that they're going to make a concerted effort to slow him down, because the key is still for Nick Sorensen's defense, slow down the run, make a team one-dimensional, and that's exactly what they're going to try to do in this one.
I think that the advantage for the 49ers comes when they're on offense and Tampa is on defense. The Bucs defense is not their strength. They're coming off of a Monday night game that went into overtime, and they logged a lot of plays, that defense did. So, and they have, that was a Monday night game, so that's one less day of rest when the 49ers are coming off of their bye. So that's advantage 49ers. How do you see that matchup? Do you like the matchup? Are there concerns there? What do you think the 49ers offense can do against that Bucs defense?
Well, they should have an opportunity to do a lot. Tampa Bay's defense hasn't been good against the run this year. They're giving up over 130 yards on the ground, but they're also giving up over 250 yards through the air. So this defense has really been the shortcoming of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The offense has been winning shootouts while the defense has been letting them down consistently. And you saw it. They wore down as that game progressed for the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs looked great in that fourth quarter overtime, being able to move the football. So I think that if the 49ers can build a running game against this really good Bucs defense, or perceivably good, because they have guys like Kalia Kancey and they have Vita Vea, and they should be better than they've been playing. If you can get a run game going, you can wear down this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense down the stretch, and that's when you can really start pouring it on. We've seen the 49ers move the ball up and down the field this season and not be able to finish it off with a touchdown. If they finish it off with touchdowns against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're going to win big. But I think they have to get the run game going, establish that, and after that, everything will open up for them offensively. And I think that's what they're going to go in there to do. So Tampa Bay's defense, definitely not as good as it's been in the past, which is shocking because they still have some really good football players.
What do you how do you see this game coming? Is this going to be a win for the 49ers, or do you think that this could potentially be a loss?
I think this is a good opportunity for the 49ers to get a win. You're coming off a bye. You talked about the deficiency as far as Tampa Bay has as far as rest time. This is the 49ers' big advantage when it comes to rest, coming out of a bye, short week for Tampa Bay, overtime. But I also think the 49ers have played well against Tampa Bay recently, including Baker Mayfield and that Tampa Bay Bucs team coming into San Francisco and getting dispatched of. So I think this is a good matchup for the 49ers. I think that they can win this football game. It's not going to be easy. This offense for Tampa Bay is still going to move the football on the 49ers, but I just think the 49ers are motivated. They know what this means, and they need to get a big win. And it does have playoff implications, because if Tampa Bay wins, Tampa Bay keeps themselves in the mix, not just for the South, but for a wild card spot. If they get beat, they're going to fall 2 games behind the 49ers. They can't afford that to happen. So it's a big game for both teams, but I expect the 49ers to go out there and handle business.
Now, the big question is, do you expect a 49ers second half surge? They've done this in the past. I know that they're capable of doing it again. My concern lies in the fact that they are getting a little older. They've made some deep postseason runs now the past, 3 seasons in a row. Ultimately, that's going to start catching up to you. Can they do it again? Or do you have concerns? I mean, we could take a look at the schedule and see what we think they're going to do the rest of the way. Obviously, that Green Bay game is going to be tough. That Buffalo game is going to be tough. They played Detroit at the end. They could be the best team in the NFL at this point. And then there's 3 division games: one against Seattle, one against Arizona, one against the Rams. Those are going to be tough games as well. They could run the table, and I don't think that they'll run the table and win every game, but they could turn things around like they have in years past. They could also struggle. We've seen some of the problems they have. Maybe McCaffrey doesn't seem healthy when he comes back. You never know. There could be other injuries, hopefully not. But how do you see the second half? Will there be another 49ers surge?
I think they're poised for a second half surge. And I think we've seen this consistently from the 49ers for a few years now. So it's become a trend. And you don't always want this to be the trend, but it has been for the 49ers. And I think when you just look at guys that they're adding back, a Christian McCaffrey, a Yetur Gross-Matos, John Feliciano, they're getting back guys at the right positions. And they're going to get that lift of having Dre Greenlaw come back. And just Dre Greenlaw working on the side field already affected Trent Williams. Like, he took notice of it. It was good to see. Those types of things naturally kind of get your momentum rolling. I think it is about momentum, and it has to start with a Tampa Bay win. If the 49ers beat Tampa Bay and are able to follow that up with a Seattle victory at home, they are playing Seattle at home, which is huge. I think that right there gets the ball rolling on a second half surge. And then you have to win one of the 2, Green Bay or Buffalo. Win one of those. You feel like you went 3-1 in the first 4-game block of the second half of the season. You feel like you've put yourself in a prime position to not just win the division, but position yourself in the playoff hunt to be kind of seeded maybe 2 or 3 and have an opportunity for a second home playoff game, which is a key for the 49ers. So I think the surge is coming. I think they're getting players back at the right time. And I just seen this team consistently make adjustments and be able to play well. And I think that's what they're going to do the second half of the season.
Great stuff, Ant. Anything else you want to add before we take off here?
No, I think that this was a fun conversation. I enjoyed it. I'm excited about 49ers football and them playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday. And I'm hoping for a big win so that way next week me and you can talk about how the 49ers surge is still on target, and maybe they can go out and dispatch the Seahawks after that. That would definitely put this season in a whole new perspective. If all of a sudden we are talking in a few weeks that they're 6-4, looking to maybe go 7-4 against Green Bay, definitely would change some minds around the league about who the 49ers are.
Yeah, a win on Sunday puts them back in the positive column with a winning record, and it would also be the first time this season that they win back-to-back games. And if you're going to win your division, if you're going to compete for a postseason spot and ultimately compete to win the Super Bowl, you have to win some back-to-back games at some point. So might as well start now. That's all we have for today. Thank you for everybody that is watching or listening. Thank you for those that have been active in the chat. We appreciate that time. Please take a minute and like and subscribe to both channels. We would appreciate that. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.